Hour number 2 on this Wednesday live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. We welcome you to it. He is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. Some National Football League news, updates around the NFL to bring you in the early portion of this offseason. The franchise tag window started yesterday, 4 p.m. Eastern time until 2 weeks from yesterday, Tuesday, March 5th. 4 p.m. Eastern time, where if there is an eligible candidate on an NFL roster, that team can place the franchise tag on that player. No news exactly out of that arena yesterday. Some other news around the NFL, and we'll continue to dive through the world of sports. Big changes to college football in terms of the CFP moving forward. We'll get you set for a Wednesday night in college basketball as well here in hour number 2.
Yeah, by the way, the Super Bowl feels like it already has been 6 months since it actually played, and it hasn't been that far away as we start to set up the new year already. And the NFL is designed for this, man. It's 365, 24/7, so away we go into the offseason, and it feels like just when the Super Bowl is done, like, ooh, time to decompress and look forward to other things. Those hot topics creep right up, and certainly we're going to tackle those as well.
The NFL is king for 365 days a year. It's just what it is when it comes to the National Football League. We highlight other things. There will be more of a focus, of course, on basketball, on the early beginnings of a Major League Baseball season. But if the NFL has something to say, they will make sure it is headline news. Let's welcome in our SportsGrid radio audience here to hour number 2. He is Donnie. I am Ben. You are listening on Sirius XM, channel 159, and all of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the mix as well. It's a Wednesday on the early line. This is off-season drama, certainly so, for the Chicago Bears. What are they going to do with that first overall pick? What is Justin Fields' future in the Windy City? Well, to some astute eyes, it was pointed out that Justin Fields no longer, if he ever did, but no longer follows the Chicago Bears on Instagram. The native of just outside of Atlanta does follow a few Falcons, however, like Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts, because the overall thought is, if it's not Chicago, could a likely destination be a homecoming return for Justin Fields? The Falcons desperately in need of a quarterback. Is there any worth of this story, DRS, in your mind, that Fields does not follow the Chicago Bears on Instagram?
No, there's no worth to this story, and we see it so many times as it plays out. Like, you think Justin Fields doesn't have friends around the NFL, particularly be some of the better players on the Atlanta Falcons, that, yes, he is from that Georgia area where he would just be following them. I love these internet sleuths that get a hold of, oh, wait a second, he's not following the Bears, but he's following a couple of Atlanta Falcons. That's definitely got to be it. Every time you see a guy, quote-unquote, scrub his social media, don't we usually hear like 3 days later, I was like, I don't even run that account here. They were just changing some pictures up and down and getting some things ready for my new, line of clothes that's going to come out here. Maybe I just signed with Gatorade at this point, and they were going to put some new photos up at this point. I don't buy into any of this stuff here that pans out. Now, granted, is Atlanta a good spot for Justin Fields? That's another story there. But just the fact that he follows a couple Atlanta guys and he doesn't follow the Bears, ooh, that's really big news. Nonsense.
I don't think it's any bit of news either. Now, Justin Fields' dog, Uno, not following the Bears on Instagram, that might be enough to convince me they have already decided they are going to draft Caleb Williams and get rid of Fields. Here's the interesting component in terms of what will actually happen to Justin Fields in Chicago. What can the Bears get back for him? He is not a free agent. He is still under contract entering year number 4. Is it going to be a first-round pick? No. Is it going to be a day 2 selection, a second or third rounder? Maybe more third rounder than that. That's just the value of a quarterback in today's NFL if he is not the face of a franchise. But in terms of the mock odds of what is most likely, not only the natural geographic ties of being from the Atlanta area, but just because the Falcons need a quarterback and they will have a new head coach in Raheem Morris with all the young offensive talent around the quarterback position, that would make a ton of sense. The Patriots have the 3rd overall pick. I don't think it's going to be New England. We can go through this list. I do believe our mock odds makers in the lab got it correct to make the Falcons the favorite to land Justin Fields.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense too, Ben. And also, you're taking a look at one of those things where you say to yourself, you're going to give up a top 5 pick for Justin Fields. No, you're not. But here's how it usually works in the NFL, right? The sliding scale. Who'll go for a day 2 pick, which probably means, let's just say, a middle round, second round pick for
Yeah.
Justin Fields. I think is fair market value for him. He's talented. The upside is still there and it can work out. And anybody that says, hey, if Justin Fields in the second round this year, would you take him? Of course they would take him in the second round. But also, if he plays well, that escalation, and let's just say plays 75% of the team snaps, could be a day 1 pick, similar to what we saw from the Indianapolis Colts and the Carson Wentz pick just a few short years ago. I think that makes the most sense. And I do think Atlanta is a great spot for him. Even the New England Patriots could be a solid pick for me. But I do think all signs point where making the most sense, being in Atlanta, he would be a fan favorite there from all sides. Raheem Morris, new head coach, looking for his quarterback and franchise guy, and maybe doesn't want to start over with a young draft pick because, you know what, if this busts out, I'm going to lose my job. At least I get a known professional coming to town with a lot to prove and a lot of money on the line as well. If he does play well, I think all signs point to Atlanta. It makes the most sense here, Ben. It does.
I have said multiple times, I believe the situation has soured in Chicago. I believe Chicago will use the number 1 overall pick to draft Caleb Williams. But I still believe Justin Fields can be a successful starting quarterback in the NFL. I would love the situation he would find himself in Atlanta in terms of the talent around him. We'll see what it means from the coaching position. Did not love the hire of Raheem Morris. As we look at what might happen at number 1, again, in the marketplace for NFL draft odds, it's not the Chicago Bears use the number 1 overall pick to draft Caleb Williams at a minus 1,500 price. It's just that Caleb Williams goes first overall, and he is still a minus 1,500 favorite to do just that. By the way, these are the stats from his non-Heisman winning college football season at USC. More than 3,600 passing yards, 41 passing touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. That was his non-Heisman winning season. Yes, USC struggled at the tail end of last year, and there maybe are some questions outside of that. Caleb Williams, to me, Donnie, is still 1 of 1. He should, and I believe will, go first overall.
It's easy. He's going to go number 1 overall to the Chicago Bears. Just put yourself in the GM shoes. If you pass on Caleb Williams and he turns out to be a 10-time All-Pro, wins 3 Super Bowls, but you held on to Justin Fields, nobody's going to be upset if you trade Justin Fields and he has moderate success around the NFL. And even if Caleb Williams isn't a true superstar quarterback, it's the only decision to make. You have to draft him number 1 overall, Ben.
41 total touchdowns, by the way, 30 passing scores, 11 on the ground for Caleb Williams. We will look at the NFL, the risers and the fallers in 2024 next.
Best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like, you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What do we do with the Nets, though? Because this team is
hot garbage. I mean, poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
I mean, the reason that they parted ways with Jacques Vaughn in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers. And going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Some will rise and some will fall in the 2024 NFL season. Yes, it is late February, but we look at the Super Bowl odds at this moment to find the teams that might be making the biggest strides in a positive way and those that might regress this upcoming NFL season starting in September. Our biggest riser and our biggest faller. Your biggest riser, DRS, is who around the National Football League?
Yeah, trying to have some fun here, looking at who do you think could make that leap next year? And I don't want to say like, oh, well, they're definitely going to win a Super Bowl, but I sort of used it as what's the price point I'm looking for and who do I think can achieve that based on what happened last year and playing it forward to this year. It's the Los Angeles Rams for me, Ben, sitting here to win the Super Bowl at a 30-1 price at the FanDuel Sportsbook. I was one of the guys that started the season last year and said to myself, let's play out the Rams season. All right, well, they'll open up the season, be like 1-6, 1-7. Aaron Donald will go over to the Kansas City Chiefs, and Cooper Kupp will probably move on to another organization. Matthew Stafford's neck injury is going to be too much, and his wife was already talking on podcasts like, my husband comes home every single night and says he walks into the room is like, I'm not friends with anybody. I don't know what they're talking about. I can't even relate to these players anymore. It turned out to all be false by the end of the season, as it turned out, which is why I'm starting to buy in the Rams. They had a great season for what I thought was going to happen last year because I thought it was going to be doom and gloom and disaster, and everybody was just stealing paychecks on their way out the door, which included Sean McVay. But at the end of the season, what do we hear from Sean McVay? Hey, man, this Rams team, saved my professional life. I love coaching again. I'm not going anywhere. Matthew Stafford had a good season and was healthy here. Puka Nacua stepped up as that true number one wide receiver when you already have Cooper Kupp. And the biggest issue that we've had in the past, Ben, with those Rams is what? They never have any draft picks and never have any salary cap space. You take a look here. They're 12th best salary cap space here heading into next season with close to $27 million able to spend here. And draft picks starting to come back into the fold for me next year. And also takes into effect, you get that Super Bowl hangover from a team already in your division, which was the San Francisco 49ers. Why not? A 30-1 price for me for the Los Angeles Rams heading into next year makes some sense.
Alert the presses. The Rams have a first-round draft pick, and it's 19th overall. What do the Rams do with their draft picks this year? I think they need to reinforce the defense, as we shared last segment. Raheem Morris, no longer the DC in L.A. The head coach in Atlanta, Chris Shula, that's a good last name to have in football, will be the defensive coordinator in Los Angeles. He has been with the Rams for 8 years as a part of that organization. By the way, do you know what the podcast that Kelly Stafford hosts is called?
I believe is it the early line? Is that what it is? Or is it the morning after, right? It's one of them.
The morning after. The morning after is the name of Kelly Stafford's podcast. What a
trademark
name
was
that
up,
is.
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah,
you know
she was
I mean?
waiting. As soon as we joined forces, she went right in there and got TMA for her. We should have got a royalty on that trademark. So, DRS, last year, I was actually optimistic about the LA Rams. The first win total bet I made in the NFL was in late March, the over 6.5 for the Rams, thinking that if health was good once again for Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, this team could win at least 7 games. I didn't think they'd be a playoff team. I didn't think they'd contend for an NFC championship like they had 2 years prior in winning a Super Bowl in Los Angeles. But I thought they could get to 7. And then the health wasn't great. Reports out of training camp was Stafford was battling things. Cooper Kupp was on the IR up until even after week number 1 and into the first few weeks of the NFL season. The win total dropped from 6.5 to 5.5, and I was trying to cash out. The FanDuel Sportsbook would not let me. Thankfully, they did not. I ended up cashing that as the Rams won 10 games and got to the NFC postseason. My biggest riser is the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know what you might be thinking. Ben, the Bengals, they have been to 2 of the previous 3 AFC championship games, and it's a 15-1 number. I don't think 15-1 is accurate. I think the Bengals should have the second best price to win the AFC, only behind the Chiefs, because unlike the Ravens and the Bills and the Jets and the Chargers and any other teams that have the idea of promise and hope and optimism, the Bengals have pedigree and the Bengals have proven it. And if Joe Burrow is healthy for a full NFL season, as he has been for 2 of the 4 in his NFL career, 2021 and 2022, the Bengals reached the AFC Championship game. It's just the trend. I expect that to be the case. Cincinnati, my biggest riser at 15-1. 4th best price right now out of the AFC teams to win Super Bowl 59. I don't think it should be number 4.
Yeah, and you're right about that, too. And there's one team in the AFC that probably is like, oh, Ben, I can't believe you picked that team. It's probably Kansas City, because the one team when Joe Burrow is healthy and going toe-to-toe with, he can deal with Kansas City, which, again, gets injured last year out for the season, railroads it. You always want to take a look at that team, too. Like, it's not like, oh, they were really good this year, let's buy into them next year. You want that next-level chance. And Joe Burrow coming back healthy with Jamar Chase. We'll see if T. Higgins does reappear. But anytime you have Joe Burrow healthy, you got a legitimate chance to take down championships here, because that pedigree is there. He's been to a Super Bowl and was within minutes of winning the Super Bowl against the Rams.
He has had 2 fully healthy years. Once again, 2021, 2022. The Bengals have won the division each of those 2 seasons. They've won at least 10 games each of those 2 seasons, 12 wins in 2022, and they have at least reached the AFC Championship game in both of those years. Patrick Mahomes has a 15-3 now playoff record in his NFL career. 2 of the losses to Tom Brady. Joe Burrow, the only other quarterback to take down Mahomes. Biggest faller from the Super Bowl 59 odds is who?
For me, it's the Miami Dolphins at a 21-1 price here at the FanDuel Sportsbook. And the reason I'm picking the Miami Dolphins is it's not that I'm not excited for next year, and I like what McDaniel's done as a head coach. I think it's a fun offense to get into, but they had a lot of things this year go right for them, which includes that offense and Tua Tagovailoa staying healthy until the end when it was the defense that fell apart with all of the injuries. We know in the NFL, a lot of times it's a crapshoot. You have to have a really good football team, get a lot of breaks go your way, and stay healthy and sort of outlast other teams. They weren't able to do that. But here's the issue that creeps into it. What was the one reason why, for myself, and rightfully so, I couldn't bet the Miami Dolphins, Ben? I didn't know if Tua Tagovailoa was going to be able to stay healthy the entire season. Therefore, I was out on them.
Yeah.
He ended up staying healthy for that entire football season, and it didn't work out in their favor. Now, also, as we move forward, you take a look at the cap situations. I just told you about the Rams. Hey, look at this. Draft picks and cap space available. This should be a good offseason for them. The Miami Dolphins coming into this year, $51 million. Hey, that sounds great. No. That's over the cap. And also, did you know that you're going to have to make a decision now on what you want to pay Tua Tagovailoa as your franchise guy? There's no guarantees you could stay healthy the entire season. He did last year. Maybe he does in 2024, but I'm out on the Miami Dolphins. Over the cap, Luz Fangio is your coach. Last year was the year you could have put it together and weren't able to make it happen. I don't see them putting it together this year. They're going to be a little bit lower on my totem pole. Why? Because the East, forget about the New England Patriots. The Jets are going to get Aaron Rodgers back. They'll still be a formidable opponent, and I really like the Buffalo Bills. So that odd man out for me is the Miami Dolphins.
DRS, can I ask, did the Dolphins pick up Tua's 5th year? I forget. They picked it up entering last season, I believe.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure of the exact ramifications, but I do believe they're due for a big chunk of change this year for Tua Tagovailoa, whether to pay him, and also would he accept just the 1-year deal and play it out, or does he want that big contract extension, which he's probably in line for? That's what I'm playing it into.
Yeah, and that contract extension would have to happen. I'm pretty sure. I'll make sure of this, but I am pretty sure they picked up his 5th-year option on his rookie deal, so he's still under his rookie contract. But the extension will have to come if they want to keep Tua Tagovailoa. My biggest faller, the Dallas Cowboys at 13-1. I would never bet a playoff or postseason price on Dallas, and this is the year I expect some regression in the regular season as well. The Cowboys have won at least 12 games each of the last 3 years, 2 NFC East divisional crowns in 2 of those 3 seasons. I don't think there has been a coach on a warmer seat entering a year than Mike McCarthy, and I believe the loss of Dan Quinn is going to rear its ugly head. The Cowboys, a top 10 scoring defense each of the past 3 years. Now it's Mike Zimmer, a good defensive mind, but the year prior to Dan Quinn, the Cowboys were the 5th worst scoring defense in the NFL. And oh yeah, they're going to have to pay Dak once again. Back to college football, the 5+7 format. Do we like it? We debate next.
Best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What do we do with the Nets, though? Because this team is hot garbage. Poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
I mean, the reason that they parted ways with Jacques Vaughn in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers. And going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Ain't no wires here as we welcome in Mark Zinno, the man in the middle, for a football focus live on a Wednesday on the early line on SportsGrid. Donnie is on the right side. I am Ben Stevens. Zinno, we need your football focus. Early off-season action around the National Football League, but the big news yesterday in college football in the changes to the CFP format we will get to in just a moment. First, thank you for joining us here on this Wednesday on TEL.
Oh, it was great to be here with you guys as always. And I hope that myself here on this Wednesday can bring the passion and energy that the early line demands.
Yes, we will follow a structure. It will be great. So we focus on our first topic, that the change to the college football playoff. Of course, the expansion to 12 teams, but when there was a Power 5 and the Pac-12 still existed, it was going to be a 6+6. 6 conference champions earn an automatic berth, 6 at-large bids available. Now, without the Pac-12 and a Power 4, if you want to call it that, 5 automatic qualifiers, for 5 conference champions and 7 at-large berths. The 5+7 for the 12-team college football playoff. Zinno, do you like the format that will begin in 2024?
Well, let me just say off the bat, you know me. I've hated the idea of college football expansion from the beginning. It dynamically changes the regular season and how teams will play and what it means to them and everything else. That aside, rewarding the conference champions makes the most sense. However, there is going to be some sort of consternation going here that teams that don't win their conference championship, and let's just take the SEC. You get an undefeated SEC champ and a one-loss SEC champ who's going to end up with one-loss SEC, non-champion, is going to end up in this seeding pool against a conference championship team that isn't as good. Theoretically, you could have a 2-loss ACC champion, a 2-loss Big 12 champion, and a 1-loss SEC non-champion, and they're going to be ranked lower. I mean, we're going to have this issue here where there's going to be some better team that's going to end up getting the shaft, similar to what we see in the NFL when there's a below 500 division winner who gets a home playoff game versus a 11-6 now wild card team that has to go out on the road. It all kind of depends on how it shakes out, but that's what you're going to see. And again, we get stuck in these cycles here with this stuff, guys, where we try to make perfect the enemy of good. Right? If you're going to just do 12 teams, just pick the best 12 teams and seed them accordingly. Like at the end of the day, if the college football playoff rankings don't determine 1 through 12, then why are we keeping them at this point? Right? If it's not going, then what is the point of the CFP rankings to be there? Because you could have, as I just said, you could have a 1-loss SEC team be ranked in the top 4, and yet they're going to end up with a 6 seed. What's the point of the rankings if we're not going to follow them?
No, I agree with you completely on that end of it, because if it's the top 12 teams in the country, just make it the top 12 teams in the country, seed accordingly, and away we go into it. Hopefully they'll get that ironed out. But for me, the expansion, I do like it. We'll enjoy it next year as it comes up. But also from a handicapping point of view here, Mark, take me through this, because in the past we were maybe lining up just 2 teams or maybe 4 teams. And part of that equation that you sort of want to balance is saying to yourself, like, yeah, I would like to take an SEC team, but my goodness, they might end up with 2 losses and my team won't even make the college football playoff, let alone be able to win a championship. With more teams added, does that change your handicapping IQ when trying to pick a team out to win a national championship now?
Yeah, of course. I would never pick a team to win the college football playoff that I didn't think at a minimum could win their conference and make the Final Four, right? Like that had to be the determinant. Yeah. Could they win their conference and make the Final Four? Now I don't have to worry about that. Now I just have to look at how good a team is on their own merit and hope they get a good enough draw in the 12-team seeding and a good enough path to get them through. So clearly you can open up your sort of futures markets a little bit wider now and take flyers on teams that might not necessarily be there. Going into the beginning of last season, we didn't know that Texas was going to be as good as they were. We thought they would be competitive, right? But we had no real data points to say Texas was going to make the college football playoff. In fact, we had more to say that they weren't. Now you can go into it with a team like Texas. I can go into it with a team, any of these teams in the Big 12 and go, if they got a shot to be one of the top 12 teams in the nation, they get a good enough draw. If they avoid the 1 seed Georgia or the 2 seed, whoever it may be, Florida State, whatever it may be, and go, well, they could get a shot here if they're in the 6 or 7 spot and have a clear path where we get down to the Final Four and you're in this coin flip situation. So, yeah, it's clearly going to change your handicapping perspective from a futures market.
It really has to. When you look at those national championship odds, Penn State and Notre Dame tied for the 10th best price at 25-1. But if we keep Penn State up there, 9 of those 10 best prices that you see hail from either the SEC or the Big Ten. The top 8 prices, all from the SEC or the Big Ten. 5 from the Southeastern Conference, 3 from the Big Ten Conference. It also impacts the way you look at win totals. The days of Texas or Alabama running through their conference and maybe going 11-1, but guaranteed at least probably only 1 loss are long gone because of the gauntlet you have to play in your respective league. You will see win totals not at a guaranteed 10.5 or 11 and a hook, but 9.5. And there is still some merit to a 9-3 team earning an at-large berth out of the Big Ten or SEC into the college football playoff. Zinno, I did the examination yesterday based on the national title odds right now. We don't have conference championship odds just yet, but in the 5+7 format, the 5 automatic berths for a conference champion and the 7 at-large teams, I had 5 SEC teams, 3 to 4 Big Ten teams, depending on if it's Penn State or Notre Dame. You give the edge to it 25-1. Only 1 ACC team, only 1 Big 12 team, and only 1 non-Power 4 Group of 5 champion. That would be Liberty at 500-1. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to be the stakeholders in this college football playoff format. That's just the reality of this changing landscape in college football.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the futures markets on it. Like, you're better off taking 2 or 3 SEC teams to win the whole thing or 2 or 3 Big Ten teams to win the whole thing than taking a flyer on anybody else, even if they've got good odds, whether it's Notre Dame or what. Because let's just say you take Notre Dame, right? And you have great odds at 25-1, and they have a 11-1 season. There's a legitimate chance they would have to go through not 1, not 2, but 3 SEC opponents to get there.
For sure.
Like, we believe Notre Dame is good enough to beat 3 consecutive SEC teams to win a national title. I don't. There's not a world where I believe that Notre Dame can pull that feat off, beating 3 straight SEC opponents of that caliber. So, when you start to look at how this all breaks down, what's the reason for me to take a flyer on a Big 12 team? Like, honestly, what there's just too much of a gauntlet to go through against the Big 10 and the SEC to get to the top of the mountain. I mean, I think the math doesn't work out in your favor for anybody but those 2 conferences.
Yeah, the cream really will rise to the top this year in that college football playoff. You're right about that. It used to be in the BCS era. Hey, it's 1 versus 2. You got to win 1 football game and you're a national champion. Now you got to go through the gauntlet here, running all the way through. Yep. We'll see how that does play out. Talking about running through the gauntlet, how about this? The Heisman Trophy odds for next year being up. It's 10 guys here at 20-1 or less here in the Heisman market. So, Mark, I'll ask you first here. Ewers, Beck, Howard, Gabriel, Milroe, anybody catching your eye before the season starts as a legitimate chance to get that Heisman Trophy?
I mean, when that list pops up, there's only one name that I want to go grab: Noah Fifita of Arizona. At that price, I mean, the number that he put up last year and what he's capable of, what Arizona was capable of, I think that is a very live individual to sneak into this thing, given the numbers where they are now. He was one of the more unheralded quarterbacks in what was left of the Pac-12. May they rest in peace. As far as what they were able to do last year. But look, Jet Fish has turned that program around, man, and they are a legitimate team to be contended with, even though they're playing a tougher schedule. Fifita stole a job from a really good quarterback, right? Like, Jaden Delora was a really good quarterback, and they threw for a ton of yards at Arizona with him, and all of a sudden this kid comes in and steals the job from him. I think there's every chance to believe that he could do it again. You give him a full 12 games under his belt, he could put up some eye-popping numbers.
Jed Fish, of course, making his way to Washington. A lot of people thought Fifita would follow him up to the Pacific Northwest. He remains with Brent Brennan, the new head coach, coming over from San Jose State for the Wildcats. Is there a reason, Donnie, you stopped at the top 5 names and didn't go to Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback for Tennessee next year?
I thought his name was I'm going to be leaving soon here. So, yeah, we left that one right out of the equation. Who he played for and who his name is really came up for that name. That's a pretty good one there.
Listen, we've done this many a times. DJ Uyongalele Iamaleava is how you pronounce his last name. Nico I'm sure some members of the SportsGrid network will call him entering next year. I did want to just make this point, Zinno, about what you said in terms of Notre Dame. Because the Irish remain independent, Notre Dame in this new 12-team format will never be able to be a top 4 team that earns an opening round bye in the college football playoff. Until they join a conference, which certainly does not seem imminent, Notre Dame will never earn a bye in the new CFP. They can host an on-campus playoff game under the watchful eye of Touchdown Jesus, but their margin of getting to the CFP does expand with the number of at-large berths being 7, but they will never earn an opening round bye. And we had never seen a 2-loss team in the 10-year history of the 4-team format make the college football playoff. There's going to be multiple 2-loss teams and maybe some 3-loss teams once again from the Big Ten and the SEC in this 12-team expanded field. From college football to college basketball, we win with Zin, not the things you put in your lips, with Mark Zinno up next, live right here on the early line on SportsGrid.
The best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like, you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What do we do with the Nets, though? Because this team is hot garbage. Poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
I mean, the reason that they parted ways with Jacques Vaughn in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers. And going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We set the stage for a Wednesday night in college basketball, but before we do that, we look back on a huge Tuesday slate. It's Donnie. Mark Zinno joins us for a second consecutive segment. Zinno, let's go back to the biggest matchup last night, the game of the night in CBB, a top 15 matchup in Omaha, Nebraska. 15th ranked Creighton pulls off the slight upset at home over the top team in the land and the reigning national champs, the Connecticut Huskies, and does so in a big way. 85-66, the victory for CU. Creighton wins outright as a 2.5-point home underdog. What is your main assessment of what we saw last night in the Big O?
Well, I would tell you that if you didn't think Creighton could win a national title before last night, I don't suggest you jump on them to do it now. I think we saw the best of what Creighton is capable of last night. And when they get, as a very good shooting team, when they're hitting shots, they're going to be incredibly, incredibly tough to beat. However, at least in the Big East this year, when I've watched them in a conference I follow very closely, as both me and Rick Pitino are having the most miserable experience of our lives, rooting for St. John's. That said, this is a team that when they are not firing on all cylinders at 100%, does have some flaws. I think you saw, again, the best of what they could be last night. And they're very, very good. And they have a 7-footer in Cal Brenner who is just, nearly unstoppable in the middle. And when you can neutralize Klingon the way they did last night, then you've got a force that really can be reckoned with. But we've also seen teams with guys like Cal Brenner come up short in the NCAA tournament, Purdue, because, it's one of those things where you have to put it all together on a certain night for 6 consecutive games to go win a national title. So I was one of the people who thought Creighton had the team to be in the Final Four and possibly win a national title before last night. So it didn't change my opinion last night. But after we saw the odds move the way they did, I don't suggest you hop on the Creighton train now. If you weren't on it before, you've probably missed, the best opportunity to go get them.
Outside of, take a look at this UConn season so far. 14-game win streak up in smoke last night against Creighton. It's a very good conference here, and certainly winning on the road against teams like Creighton is tough to do. Maybe we didn't see a blowout there, but we go back to a game on January 20th where Villanova took on UConn. It was a 1-point win there by UConn. Outside of that, they've really handled their opponents. 4 games left in Big East play here for UConn, which is Villanova, Seton Hall, Marquette, and Providence. They currently have a 2-game lead on the regular season championship. For myself, when I'm taking a look at betting odds, I like UConn. I took them last year to win the championship just before the tournament at a 25-1 price. That cashed in here. Looking at UConn moving forward, Mark, for yourself, I would like to bet UConn again, but I wouldn't be surprised if they lose a game or two down the stretch to sort of improve those odds. You can jump back in. How are you approaching UConn for the rest of the remaining parts of the season in the Big East and also in the Big East Conference tournament?
Little bit unheralded streak, or at least a dubious streak that UConn is on right now, DRS. They've lost 14 consecutive road games to ranked opponents. So when they have to go travel to Marquette, guess what? Yeah, it's probably going to be a loss. So I agree with you that they are a team that can drop a couple more games. For them, last night it was easy for them to throw in the towel after halftime. If they didn't make an early run in the second half to get back in it by the 60-minute timeout or even, closer to about 14 minutes, guess what? It wasn't worth their energy and effort to get back into that game. I think, they got within 10, I think, at one point under 8 minutes, but really, it wasn't an area that they needed to really push themselves in. Why? Because 6 games in March is all that's really going to matter for the UConn Huskies, and they still have the ability to do that again. I'm not betting them again to go win the national title. Certainly not at the number that I'm looking at, but we've seen how hard it is for teams to repeat as of late, so it's not where I'm going with my money. I think that UConn in and of themselves – we've seen them be susceptible. Remember, guys, look, one of the things I took Creighton last night in the first half, I didn't play the full game simply because there were 4 instances during this win streak where UConn trailed at half. They trailed at half to UNC. They trailed at half to St. John's twice. They trailed at half to Butler. And I said, you know what? I've seen this team come back too many times in the second half because they're capable of doing it. Or, they only had a 1-point lead and then pulled away to win by 8 or 10, as you mentioned, the kind of size of the wins that they've had during this win streak. So, this is a very good team and a very deep team, but I wouldn't invest in them to win the national title at this point.
The margin's still very interesting. UConn nearly 16 points per game is their scoring margin, but they lost by 19 last night after blowing out Marquette by nearly 30 28 points to be exact. UConn still the title favorites. They move back by 50 cents, plus 450, now 5-1. To Mark's point, we have not seen a back-to-back repeat national champion in college basketball since 2006 and 2007, the Florida Gators under Billy Donovan. Zinno, I made the argument earlier with Donnie. I don't know if there's a ton of value in the national title odds at this moment because we are so close to Selection Sunday, about 3.5 weeks. In the path, regardless of what your seed line looks like, is going to be more important than anything you have done in the regular season. Do you disagree? Is there a team that you would point to where you think the national championship price is worth betting at this moment?
At this moment, I mean, look, Arizona, if you look at a lot of the metrics and you believe in Ken Palm and everything else, that's a top 3 team in the country. Their offense is nearly unstoppable. And they're a little bit unheralded because they play in the Pac-12. And who stays up that late to watch college basketball other than degenerates like you guys and I do? Well, you guys don't. You have to get up early in the morning. So there are guys like me who are staying up watching the Pac-12 late at night and looking at these teams and, Mountain West basketball as well. So I think there's some value there with Arizona. I typically like to lock in my wagers for futures bets when you get to the final week of the regular season right before conference tournaments. I think then is when you really have the best idea and we're as close to what seed line teams are going to be on. Not much changes once you get into conference tournaments, right? Like teams are pretty much locked in. Save the run by a team that's not supposed to win their conference that puts it through and changes things dramatically. Most of these teams are pretty much locked in. If you look at the bracketologist, where they are, you have a much better idea. So I'll wait another week or two before I really lock in those futures bets because I can get a lot more confident what their path is going to look like and where they're going to have to go through in order to go win a national title. So that's kind of the window that I look for.
Great action here on a Wednesday night. Why don't we get right into it here? How about Florida and Alabama tipping off at 7 o'clock tonight? An SEC tilt. The FanDuel Sportsbook opened this side as a minus 7.5 point favorite towards Alabama. That's now increased to 8.5 points. But how about this? A total listed at opening 175.5, only moved 1 point down to 174.5. We're expecting points in this game tonight. Mark, give us a look on what you think comes ahead here for Florida and Alabama.
There are 2 systems in college basketball this year that have been extremely profitable. One of them is the home unranked favorite against the ranked road opponent, which we'll see tonight in the Mountain West again. And the other one is where a pair of ranked teams play, the home team is cashing better than 62% of the time. So I get why there is a lot of reasons to back Alabama tonight. Number feels a little bit thick, guys, to me. Like I just, I don't know. I played against Florida when they played Georgia last time out in a game that they covered the 4 points, and they probably shouldn't have, if you ask me. Then again, I'm biased because I was on Georgia. But nonetheless, I say all that because Florida is a very capable team, and they've come on as of late. Are they at the same level as Alabama? I don't think so. But, this is a spot here where, Alabama can be up by 6 or 7 late and just let a lazy bucket in. And guess what? Instead of the free throws going your way, it's a chuck up 3 that doesn't go your way. It just feels like when you're getting this 9 number that it's a little high. But the other side of the logic here, guys, is that the number's that big for a reason because Alabama is that much better of a team than Florida. And what we've seen, guys, I think it's fair to say this. Home court in college basketball this year feels like it's almost worth about 4 to 4.5, maybe even 5 points at certain spots. Like you can't really play a road favorite in college basketball right now. I can't. It's just not a spot that I want to get into. We've seen home court mean a ton to these teams. Look what it did for Creighton last night. Is that possible that they can do it again? Yeah, I think it is. I think Alabama absolutely can win this game by double digits. But, these are games that I typically cut in half, so I don't have to deal with a whole 40 minutes of stress, just 20 minutes. If Florida can't hang in by 4 or 5 early, they're probably not hanging in by 8 or 9 for the game.
That's a big total, over under 174.5, but it is justified. Alabama, the most efficient offense in the country. Florida, 10th most efficient. Neither defense ranks inside the top 70, and both have one of the 40th fastest tempos in the country in college basketball. But that's a lot of points for a college basketball game. Now we go to the ACC, where Duke has won 4 straight games, and Duke has covered in 4 straight games. A road favorite tonight for the Blue Devils in Coral Gables against the Miami team that is struggling. They've lost 4 straight games, all booked as an underdog, only covering once. What's the breakdown tonight between the Canes and the Dukies?
If Miami wants any legitimate claim to being a tournament team, it's a game they have to win. This is the quad one win that you need in your back pocket. This is the win that's going to sort of define your season. It's a win that could also catapult them to running the rest of the slate in the ACC. Put a couple of ACC wins in your back pocket in the tournament, and you might make a legitimate argument for a team like Miami that they get into the playing game, that 6-11 playing game, that's the spot where they would end up going in. This is a team that still can shoot the ball very well. They're very well coached by Jim Larinaga, and I think if you can't get up for this game, and from a betting perspective, if you can't get up to this game to at least cover it, Miami, God, just go puke in a bucket. Like, honestly, there's no reason to believe in the Hurricanes anymore after this if they can't come close to winning this game and keep this thing within one possession. If they win it outright, they get a pulse for the NCAA tournament. If not, you may as well just pull the plug on life support because they're done for the year.
Yeah, disappointing season nonetheless for Miami, but you're right. You can turn that around quickly here, stack up some wins late in the ACC, then head towards that conference championship tournament and maybe get hot at the right time here. Let's get out to the West Coast here because that's the Mountain West. Colorado State and New Mexico. Take a look at this line. Opened up as a 5.5-point favorite here towards New Mexico here from the FanDuel Sportsbook. Now sitting at 6.5, a total. Also getting some tempo here at 156.5. These two teams are coming with 8 wins in the Mountain West in a stacked Mountain West this year. What's your edge on this game, Mark?
I mean, look, New Mexico is the most efficient offense in the Mountain West. They're number one in offensive efficiency. They play with the most tempo. This is a team and a conference here where, again, home court means so much in the Mountain West. We've seen it repeatedly, and it's the system I talked about before. The home unranked favorite against the ranked road opponent that is cashing better than 67% of the time this year, guys. It's a system that I'm not walking away from, even if I'm on the wrong side of it. I end up going back to it night in and night out when the situation presents itself because we've seen it work in our favor from a betting standpoint. Look, I think Colorado State's a little bit of I don't want to call them a fraud, but they've probably been overvalued more this season than what they should have been. They don't feel like a consistent top 25 team. But we've seen them get some big wins earlier in the year, especially at home. And so, the people who do the rankings tend to like them a lot. But look at the size of this number. It's telling. Most of the spreads we've seen in this system are like -2, -3, -3.5, telling you a ton about what odds makers think and how respected New Mexico is for them to be laying this number tonight.
The Lobos have lost 2 straight games at home in Mountain West play, but read the lines. 7-3. The home unranked favorite against a ranked road opponent in the month of February. 7-3, not just against the number, 7-3 straight up as well. Of course, we're talking about the favored side. Mountain West title odds, Utah State making a claim yesterday with the big home victory over San Diego State. If you believe in New Mexico, cashing that ticket tonight and covering as a 6.5-point home favorite, or at least winning outright, the Lobos will face off against the Aggies in the regular season finale. Mark Zinno, we appreciate the time as always. We round out this second hour next.
best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like, you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What do we do with the Nets, though? Because this team is hot garbage. Poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
I mean, the reason that they parted ways with Jacques Vaughn in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers. And going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Ending out this second hour, live right here on a Wednesday on the early line on SportsGrid. I am Ben, he is Donnie, and this is the SportsGrid app, the ultimate sports betting companion app, available for download of both the Apple and the Play Store. Scan that QR code on your screen in just a matter of moments. All of our information and insight available in the palm of your hand. Here's an interesting question for the people out there. Out of the 4 major men's professional sports leagues in the United States, North America, however you want to categorize it with our good Canadian neighbors, which league will expand next? The NBA, the NFL, MLB, or the NHL? That was the question for all of you out there in Fade the Public. Will it be MLB? Will it be the NBA? Will it be the NFL or the National Hockey League? That was the question at Fade the Public or at SportsGrid TV on Twitter for this Fade the Public poll. Most of the public, about 41% of the public, saying if a league is to expand next, it will be the NBA. DRS, what got your vote in this Fade the Public poll?
The one thing I wish my vote would have went toward which league should actually contract some of these teams here. That would have been a little bit more of an improvement here. But if we're talking about expansion for me, I took the easy way out and went Major League Baseball, which only got about 29% of the vote. The reason is you have the Oakland A's moving to be the Las Vegas A's shortly. I do think Major League Baseball will quickly replenish that Oakland market here, which is used to having 2 baseball teams. So that's the route I went. If we're taking a look at the NBA at 40%, I think everybody's looking forward to, because Las Vegas is probably going to get an NBA team sooner than later here, so that does make some sense. The NFL, there's no need for expansion, neither in the NHL as well. But for me, I went Major League Baseball, just trying to put 2 and 2 together. Bay Area loses a team, you replace a team in the Bay Area within the next 5 years. I think it makes the most sense for me.
I voted for the NFL. Let's bring a team to London and not move the Jaguars to London, but put a team in London.
A team in
more
Brooklyn.
so, kid. We'll continue to look at the Fade the Public poll when hour 3 starts in less than 55 seconds.